My name is Evan Porter, and apparently, I'm the punchline to my wife's favorite joke. The setup? How did I end up with the smallest man in every room? The punchline? Me, standing there like an idiot, pretending it's funny. Talia dropped that gem at dinner last Tuesday, right in front of her gaggle of enablers. Jenna West, her so-called best friend, nearly choked on her wine laughing. Danny Pruitt, never one to miss a chance to pile on, added her own commentary about settling for less. They passed around my photo from our wedding like it was evidence in a court case. Seriously, Talia, Jenna wheezed between laughs. What were you thinking? I set down my fork and looked directly at my wife of 8 years. Maybe you should go find something bigger then. The laughter faded. Talia's smile flickered like a broken neon sign. Evan, I was just joking. So was I said, cutting into my steak with deliberate precision. But at least my joke has potential. That was 6 months ago. 6 months of watching my marriage crumble while my wife played the victim and her friends cheered her on. 6 months of late-night networking events and mysterious text messages. 6 months of being treated like I was invisible in my own house. I'm a software architect. I solve problems for a living. Complex systems, broken code, impossible timelines. I fix them all. What I couldn't figure out was how to fix a wife who'd already decided I wasn't worth the effort. The revelation came at work, of all places. Derek Lang, my closest friend and fellow survivor of corporate mediocrity, pulled me aside during lunch. Dude, you need to see this, he said, shoving his phone in my face. It was a private social media group called Talia's Truth Circle. 43 members, all women, all sharing intimate details about their relationships. But the post that made me freeze wasn't about relationships in general. It was about mine, specifically. There was my photo, not the wedding one, but something more recent and far more private. Below it, Talia had written, "Still can't believe I married this. Thank God for my gym trainer Colton." Now that's what I call an upgrade. Ladies, sometimes you have to go outside your marriage to remember what you're missing. The comments were a symphony of validation. Heart emojis, fire symbols, and detailed suggestions about what she should do next. Jenna had written, "Girl, you deserve so much better. Life's too short for small packages." Danny added, "When are you finally going to dump the extra weight?" I handed Derek his phone back and walked to the bathroom. Not because I was going to be sick, though I felt like it. Not because I needed to cry, though the urge was there. I went because I needed 60 seconds of silence to process what I'd just learned. I wasn't just being cheated on. I was being publicly humiliated by the woman who'd promised to love and honor me. My private life had become entertainment for a group of bored housewives with nothing better to do than tear down other people's marriages. When I came back to my desk, Derek was waiting with coffee and a concerned expression. "What are you going to do?" he asked. I opened my laptop and started typing. "I'm going to solve a problem." "What kind of problem?" I looked at him and smiled for the first time in months. The kind that requires a complete system overhaul. That night I went home and acted normal. Talia was on the couch, scrolling through her phone and giggling at something. Probably more comments on her post. I made dinner, we ate in relative silence, and she went to bed early, claiming she had an early morning workout. With Colton, no doubt. I waited until I heard her snoring, then I got to work. As a software architect, I understand the importance of documentation, evidence, proof. I started with her laptop, which she'd carelessly left open on the kitchen counter. The truth circle was still active, and I took screenshots of everything. Every post, every comment, every casual cruelty she'd shared about our marriage. Then I moved to our shared accounts, bank statements showing charges at expensive restaurants I'd never been to, credit card bills for lingerie I'd never seen her wear, hotel receipts from business trips that didn't exist. By 3 a.m, I had a complete picture of my wife's double life. She wasn't just cheating with Colton, she was planning to leave me. The posts in her group made it clear. She was just waiting for the right moment, probably after she'd secured her financial future. But Talia had made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated the smallest man in the room. I closed the laptop and went to bed, lying next to my snoring wife with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. The next morning, Talia kissed me goodbye like nothing had happened. "I'll be late tonight," she said, adjusting her workout clothes. "Jenna and I are trying that new spinning class." "Have fun," I said, not looking up from my coffee. She paused at the door. "You okay? You seem different. Just tired. Work stuff." After she left, I called in sick and got down to business. First stop, the bank. I moved our joint savings into an account she couldn't access, not stealing, just protecting assets that were legally mine anyway. The house was titled in my name alone, a decision I'd made years ago that she'd never questioned. Smart move, past Evan. Next, I canceled the credit cards she'd been using for her extracurricular activities, let Colton pay for his own protein shakes. Then I drove to Flex Fit Gym, where my wife had been getting her workouts. The place reeked of desperation and overpriced supplements. I spotted Colton immediately, 6'2", spray tanned, with the kind of muscles that screamed, "I peaked in high school." He was training a middle-aged woman through squats, his hands lingering on her hips longer than necessary. Real professional. I waited until he finished with his client, then approached the juice bar where he was preparing his post-workout shake. "Excuse me," I said. "You're Colton, right?" He turned, sizing me up with the kind of look reserved for insects. "Yeah, you need training or something?" "Actually, I wanted to thank you." His protein shake paused halfway to his mouth. "Thank me?" "For taking such good care of my wife, Talia. She's told me so much about your special attention." The shake slipped from his hand, splattering across the floor in an explosion of chocolate and embarrassment. Half the gym turned to look. "I don't know what you're talking about," he stammered. "Sure you do." I pulled out my phone and showed him one of Talia's posts. "She's very detailed about your sessions together. Though I have to say, posting photos was a nice touch." His face went from spray tan orange to sheet white in record time. "Look, man, I can explain." "No need." I smiled and walked away, leaving him standing in a puddle of protein shake while a dozen gym members stared and whispered. That evening, I positioned myself at Murphy's Pub, 3 blocks from Talia's office. Sure enough, at 6:30, she walked in with Jenna and Danny. I sat in a corner booth, invisible as always, and listened to them dissect my marriage over cosmopolitans. "So when are you finally going to dump him?" Danny asked, stabbing her olive with unnecessary violence. "Soon," Talia said. "I just need to figure out the finances. The house is in his name, but I've been contributing to the mortgage." "You could claim emotional abuse," Jenna suggested. "Make him out to be controlling." "That's brilliant. Evan's so passive he'd probably just roll over and give me whatever I want." I activated the voice recorder on my phone and let them continue their character assassination for another hour. They covered everything from my alleged inadequacies in bed to my boring career to their theories about why I was probably gay anyway. When they finally left, I had 47 minutes of pure gold. The next day, I put Phase 2 into motion. I'd done some research on Colton and discovered something interesting. He had a girlfriend. Vanessa Pruitt, a dental hygienist with an Instagram account full of couple photos and heart emojis. I created an anonymous email account and sent her a simple message. "Thought you should know who you're sharing your boyfriend with." Attached were screenshots of Talia's posts, complete with her glowing reviews of Colton's performance. Then I turned my attention to Talia's workplace. She worked for a mid-sized marketing firm with a strict social media policy. Posting private photos of your spouse and bragging about extramarital affairs probably violated several clauses in her employment contract. I forwarded the screenshots to her HR manager, Ms. Frey, with a polite note explaining that I was concerned about my privacy being violated by an employee's social media activity. I CC'd her direct supervisor and the company president for good measure. By noon, Talia was getting phone calls. "What do you mean HR wants to see me?" she said, pacing around our kitchen. "I haven't done anything wrong." "I'm sure it's nothing," I said, not looking up from my laptop. "They said something about social media policy violations. What could that even mean?" I shrugged. "Maybe someone complained about something you posted?" The color drained from her face. "Posted where?" "I don't know, Talia. Where do you post things?" She grabbed her phone and started frantically scrolling. I watched her discover that her private group wasn't as private as she'd thought. Her posts were visible to anyone who knew where to look, including HR managers who'd been sent direct links. "Oh God," she whispered. "Oh God, oh God, oh God." "Everything okay?" I asked with genuine concern. She looked at me like she was seeing me for the first time. "Evan, did you report me to HR?" "Why would I do that? I don't even know where you work half the time." It wasn't technically a lie. I knew the building, but I'd never been inside. She left for her meeting wearing the expression of someone walking to their own execution. I spent the afternoon researching divorce lawyers and transferring more assets to accounts she couldn't touch. At 5:30, she came home carrying a cardboard box. "They fired me," she said, setting the box on the kitchen counter. "Effective immediately, escorted out by security." "I'm sorry," I said, and I was. Sorry that it had taken this long. "They said I violated the social media policy by posting private information about my marriage. Someone sent them screenshots of everything." "That's terrible. Who would do something like that?" She stared at me for a long moment. "I don't know, but I'm going to find out." That night, she called Jenna and Danny, sobbing into the phone about her job and her ruined reputation. I listened from the next room as her friends offered hollow sympathy and promised to get to the bottom of this. But I could hear it in their voices, the distance, the calculation. Talia was no longer the successful marketing coordinator with juicy gossip to share. She was a liability, a cautionary tale about what happened when you got too careless with your secrets. The smallest man in the room had just gotten a little bigger. Vanessa didn't waste time. By Thursday morning, Colton's social media accounts were flooded with angry comments from her friends and family. She'd shared the screenshots I'd sent her, along with her own commentary about lying, cheating scumbags. I found this out because Derek, ever the faithful intelligence gatherer, had been monitoring the situation. "Dude, you've started a war," he said, showing me his phone. "Look at this." Vanessa had posted a video of herself throwing Colton's belongings out of their shared apartment window. Clothes, supplements, even his precious blender. Everything landed in the courtyard while neighbors filmed and cheered. "That's unfortunate," I said, trying not to smile. "Unfortunate? You destroyed 2 relationships in 1 week. That's not unfortunate, that's surgical." He wasn't wrong, but I was just getting started. That afternoon, Colton cornered me in the parking lot outside my office building. He'd been waiting by my car, probably for hours, judging by the sweat stains on his tank top. "You think you're real smart, don't you?" he said, stepping into my personal space. "Smarter than someone who gets caught cheating through social media," I replied, not backing down. "You ruined my life, you little—" "I didn't ruin anything. You did that all by yourself. I just made sure the right people found out." He grabbed my shirt, pulling me closer. "You're going to fix this. Call Vanessa, tell her it was all lies." "Or what? Or I'll show you what happens to guys who mess with other men's women." I smiled. "You mean like you messed with mine?" That's when he shoved me. Not hard enough to knock me down, but hard enough to make his intentions clear. What he didn't know was that I'd been recording our conversation from the moment he approached my car. "Go ahead," I said, pulling out my phone. "Hit me. Give me everything I need to destroy what's left of your pathetic life." He looked at the phone, then at me. then at the security cameras mounted on the building behind us. His fists clenched and unclenched as his brain processed the trap he'd walked into. "This isn't over," he said, backing away. "Actually, it is. You just don't know it yet." I got in my car and drove home, where I found Talia on the couch, surrounded by tissues and empty wine bottles. Jenna and Danny were there, offering the kind of support that consisted mainly of agreeing that everyone else was terrible. "This is all so unfair," Danny was saying. "Someone clearly has it out for you." "But who?" Talia asked. "Who would do this?" They all looked at me as I walked through the living room. I could feel their suspicion like a physical weight. "How was work, honey?" Talia asked with fake sweetness. "Fine. Busy day. How are you holding up?" "Oh, you know, just trying to figure out who destroyed my life." "I'm sure it will work out," I said. "These things usually do." Jenna's eyes narrowed. "Evan, you seem awfully calm about all this." "What do you mean?" "Your wife lost her job because someone violated her privacy. Most husbands would be angry." "I am angry," I lied. "I'm furious that someone would invade our personal life like that." "Then why aren't you doing anything about it?" I looked directly at her. "What would you like me to do, Jenna? I'm not a detective. I can't track down anonymous emails or figure out who has access to private social media groups." The room went quiet. Too quiet. "How did you know it was an anonymous email?" Talia asked slowly. "Oops. You told me, remember? When you came home yesterday?" "No, I didn't. I never mentioned an email." I could see the wheels turning in their heads. 3 women who'd spent years gossiping about everyone else's secrets, suddenly realizing they might have overlooked the most obvious suspect. "I must have assumed," I said. "How else would HR have found out?" But the damage was done. They knew, and I knew they knew, and they knew I knew they knew. It was like a twisted game of chess where everyone could see all the pieces. After Jenna and Danny left, Talia confronted me directly. "It was you, wasn't it?" "What was me?" "Everything. The HR complaint, the screenshots, whatever happened to Colton, all of it." I sat down across from her, suddenly tired of pretending. "Does it matter?" "Of course it matters. You destroyed my career." "I didn't destroy anything, Talia. I just stopped protecting you from the consequences of your own actions." She stared at me like I'd grown a second head. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about 8 years of marriage that you threw away for a gym trainer with the IQ of a protein shake. I'm talking about you humiliating me in front of your friends and then posting about it online like it was entertainment. Those were private posts." "Nothing online is private. You should know that, working in marketing. Or should I say, worked in marketing." She started crying then, the kind of desperate tears that come when someone realizes they've lost control of the narrative. "I made a mistake," she sobbed. "I was unhappy and I made a stupid mistake. But what you did was calculated. It was cruel." "You're right," I said. "It was calculated. Do you know why?" She shook her head. "Because you spent months calculating how to humiliate me. You and your friends sat around planning my emotional destruction like it was a hobby. So yes, I calculated my response, and unlike your plan, mine actually worked." I stood up and headed for the stairs. "Where are you going?" she called after me. "To bed. Tomorrow's going to be a busy day." "Evan, wait. We need to talk about this. We need to figure out how to fix our marriage." I turned back to look at her, sitting on our couch in yesterday's clothes, surrounded by the debris of her own poor choices. "There's nothing to fix, Talia. You broke it. You can't unbake a cake." That night, I lay in our guest bedroom. I'd been sleeping there for weeks, and planned the next phase. Talia thought she'd seen the worst of it. She had no idea how wrong she was. Friday morning brought a new development. Talia's phone was buzzing constantly with notifications from the neighborhood social app, Next Door. Someone had posted the audio recording from Murphy's pub. "Oh no," she whispered, staring at her screen. "Oh no, oh no, oh no." I looked over her shoulder at the post title. Local woman caught planning to falsely accuse husband of abuse. Below it was the full 47-minute recording, complete with timestamps highlighting the most damaging quotes. The comments section was already exploding. Our neighbors, people we'd known for years, were expressing shock and disgust. Mrs. Henderson from next door wrote, "I can't believe I trusted this woman with my spare key." Mike from the corner house added, "Poor Evan. No wonder he always looked miserable at block parties." "Who posted this?" Talia demanded. "I don't know," I said honestly. I'd used an anonymous account, but she didn't need to know that. "This is harassment. This is illegal." "Is it? You were in a public place speaking loudly enough for other people to hear. I don't think there's an expectation of privacy at Murphy's pub." She looked at me with pure hatred. "You did this. I know you did this." "Prove it." That's when she called her parents. I listened from the kitchen as she sobbed into the phone, begging them to let her move back home. The conversation was brief and brutal. "What do you mean you saw the recording?" she cried. "Mom, you don't understand. It's been taken out of context." A long pause. "But I have nowhere else to go." Another pause. "Fine, I'll pack my things." She hung up and turned to me with desperate eyes. "My own parents won't even take me in. They said, I've disgraced the family name. That's unfortunate." "Unfortunate? That's all you have to say?" "What would you like me to say, Talia? That I'm sorry your plan to destroy me backfired? That I feel bad about you facing consequences for your actions?" "I never wanted to destroy you." I pulled out my phone and played back one of her recorded comments. "Honestly, I'll be doing him a favor. He's so pathetic, he probably doesn't even realize how miserable he is. At least this way, he'll have an excuse for why his life sucks." Her face crumpled. "I was angry. I was venting. I didn't mean it." "You meant every word, and now everyone knows it." That afternoon, while Talia was presumably looking for somewhere to stay, I drove to her parents' house in the suburbs. The Cranes lived in one of those pristine neighborhoods where every lawn was perfectly manicured and every house looked like it belonged in a magazine. I pulled up to their driveway and started unloading boxes from my truck. Talia's clothes, her books, her collection of motivational posters with inspirational quotes, everything I'd packed while she was out. Mrs. Crane appeared at the front door, her face a mask of embarrassment and anger. "What are you doing?" she demanded. "Returning Talia's belongings," I said pleasantly. I assumed she'd want them. "You can't just dump her things on our lawn." "I'm not dumping them. I'm carefully placing them in weatherproof containers." Which was technically true. I'd bought plastic storage bins specifically for this purpose. "This is harassment." "This is divorce logistics," I corrected. "Talia no longer lives at my house, so her possessions need to go somewhere else." By now, neighbors were coming out to watch the show. The Cranes lived on a cul-de-sac where everyone knew everyone else's business, and this was the most excitement they'd had in years. "Please," Mrs. Crane said, lowering her voice. "Can't we handle this privately?" "I tried that approach," I said, setting down another box. "Your daughter preferred the public forum. I'm just following her lead." Talia arrived as I was unloading the last box. She screeched to a halt in her car and jumped out, her face red with fury and humiliation. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" "Moving day," I said cheerfully. "I brought everything you'll need to start your new life." "You can't do this." "Actually, I can. These are your belongings and this is where you're living now. Simple math." She looked around at the neighbors, who were watching from their porches and windows like this was better than cable TV. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" she said quietly. "I'm enjoying the symmetry," I admitted. "You made our private life public entertainment. Now you get to experience what that feels like." Mr. Crane finally appeared, looking like he'd aged 10 years in the past week. "Evan, please. Can't we work this out like adults?" I am working it out like an adult, Mr. Crane. I'm dissolving a marriage that your daughter destroyed, and I'm doing it legally and efficiently. But the neighbors? We'll have something interesting to talk about at their next HOA meeting. I climbed back into my truck and rolled down the window. Oh, Talia, I called out. I almost forgot. I tossed her a manila envelope. Divorce papers. You've been served. The last thing I saw in my rearview mirror was Talia standing in her parents' driveway, surrounded by boxes and neighbors and the wreckage of her carefully constructed image. That evening, my phone started ringing. Jenna first, then Danny, then several other mutual friends who'd heard about the day's events through the neighborhood gossip network. I let them all go to voicemail. Later, I listened to the messages. They ranged from angry to pleading to threatening. The general theme was that I'd gone too far, that I was being cruel, that I needed to be the bigger man and forgive Talia's mistakes. I deleted them all and went to bed early. Tomorrow was Saturday, which meant Colton would be at the gym trying to rebuild his reputation and his client base. I had plans for Colton. Saturday morning, I drove to FlexFit Gym with a specific purpose. I'd done my research and discovered that Colton was barely hanging on to his job. The social media scandal had cost him several clients, and the gym owner was reportedly considering termination. I found him in the free weights section, training a nervous-looking businessman through bicep curls. His usual confidence was gone, replaced by the desperate enthusiasm of someone trying too hard. I waited until his session ended, then approached him at the equipment cleaning station. "How's business?" I asked casually. He spun around, his face immediately darkening. "You've got some nerve showing up here." "It's a public gym. I have a membership." "Since when?" I pulled out my brand new membership card. "Since yesterday. Thought I'd try something new." "You're here to cause more trouble." "Actually, I'm here to work out, but since you mentioned trouble..." I pulled out my phone and showed him a video that had been posted to social media the night before. It was security footage from the gym's parking lot, showing our confrontation from earlier in the week. Someone had set it to music and added commentary about steroid rage. "Where did you get this?" he demanded. "I didn't get it anywhere, it's public." Posted by someone called Gym Fails 2024. Looks like it's getting a lot of views. His face went pale as he scrolled through the comments. They were brutal, attacking everything from his professionalism to his spray tan to his obvious steroid use. "You posted this." "I don't have time to run social media accounts, Colton. I have a real job. Well, had. Unlike some people." "What's that supposed to mean?" "Just that I heard the gym owner is looking for reasons to clean house. Something about liability insurance and maintaining a professional image." As if on cue, a stern-looking man in a polo shirt approached us. "Colton, I need to see you in my office," he said. The gym owner. Perfect timing. Colton shot me a look of pure hatred before following his boss toward the administrative offices. I didn't need to hear the conversation to know how it would end. The video had over 50,000 views and counting. No business owner wants that kind of negative attention. I spent an hour on the treadmill, long enough to see Colton emerge from the office carrying a cardboard box. He didn't look in my direction as he walked toward the exit, but I could see the defeat in his shoulders. That afternoon, Talia called me from her parents' house. "You got Colton fired," she said without preamble. "Did I? How?" "Don't play dumb. That video, the social media posts, all of it. You orchestrated everything. I think you're giving me too much credit. I'm just one person. If Colton lost his job, maybe it's because he wasn't very good at it." "He was good at his job." "Was he? Because from what I saw, he spent most of his time flirting with married clients and taking inappropriate photos for social media. That doesn't sound very professional." There was a long pause. "What do you want, Evan? What will it take for you to stop this?" "Stop what?" "You know what? The revenge, the humiliation, the systematic destruction of everyone I care about." I want a divorce, Talia. Clean and simple. You sign the papers, we divide our assets according to the prenup you insisted we didn't need, and we go our separate ways. What prenup? We never signed a prenup. No, but we did sign a postnup, remember? 3 years ago when you wanted to refinance the house, you signed a lot of papers that day. Another pause, longer this time. You tricked me. I protected myself. There's a difference. I'll fight it. I'll get a lawyer. With what money? You don't have a job, remember? My parents will help. Will they? Because I heard they're pretty upset about the whole public humiliation thing. Something about family reputation and property values. She started crying then, the kind of broken sobs that come from complete defeat. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry for everything. Can't we try to work this out? 8 months ago, maybe. 6 months ago, possibly. But not now. Not after everything you've done. What about everything you've done? You've destroyed my life. I've held up a mirror, Talia. If you don't like what you see, that's not my fault. I hung up and poured myself a glass of wine. The house felt different without her constant presence. Quieter but also lighter. Like a weight had been lifted from the atmosphere itself. Monday morning brought news that Jenna and Danny had both deactivated their social media accounts. Apparently, some of their own dirty secrets had started surfacing in the wake of the Talia scandal. Funny how that works. When you spend years gossiping about everyone else, people start paying attention to your own behavior. Derek filled me in over lunch. Jenna's husband found out about her Ashley Madison account, he said, and Danny got fired for bad-mouthing her boss on social media. Apparently, she forgot her privacy settings weren't as private as she thought. That's unfortunate, I said, not meaning it at all. You're scary when you're motivated, you know that? I'm thorough. There's a difference. Is there? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've systematically destroyed everyone who crossed you. I didn't destroy anyone. I just stopped protecting them from the consequences of their own actions. And you're okay with that? I thought about it for a moment. Derek, if someone spends months plotting to humiliate you, planning to falsely accuse you of abuse, and publicly mocking your most private insecurities, what would you do? Probably not what you did. Then you're a better man than I am, or maybe just a more naive one. That evening, I came home to find Talia sitting on my front porch. She looked terrible. Unwashed hair, wrinkled clothes, the kind of appearance that screamed desperation. We need to talk, she said. No, we don't. Please, 5 minutes. Against my better judgment, I let her inside. She sat on the edge of the couch like she was afraid to get comfortable. I signed the papers, she said. Good. But I want you to know that what you did, it wasn't justice. It was cruelty. Was it? Let me ask you something, Talia. If you hadn't been caught, what would you have done next? She didn't answer. Would you have filed for divorce and claimed abuse? Would you have tried to take half of everything I've worked for? Would you have continued humiliating me in front of your friends while you played house with Colton? Still no answer. That's what I thought. So don't talk to me about cruelty. You wrote the playbook. I just played by your rules. She stood up and walked toward the door, then turned back. I hope you're happy, she said. I'm not happy, Talia, but I'm free, and that's enough. After she left, I sat in my quiet house and realized she was wrong about one thing. I was happy. Not the giddy, euphoric kind of happiness, but the deep, satisfying contentment that comes from solving a complex problem. The smallest man in the room had finally found his voice. 3 weeks later, just as I was starting to think the drama was over, Talia and Colton made one last desperate play. It was a Thursday evening, and I was grilling dinner in my backyard when I heard voices in my driveway. Loud, angry voices that were clearly meant to be heard by the neighbors. I walked around to the front of the house and found them both standing next to Colton's beat-up Honda Civic. Apparently, Vanessa had kept the nice car in their breakup. "There he is!" Talia shouted, pointing at me like I was a criminal. "The man who destroyed our lives!" Several neighbors had already come out to watch. The Hendersons, Mike from the corner, even old Mr. Peterson, who usually minded his own business. It was like a block party, except the entertainment was my ex-wife's public breakdown. "Can I help you?" I asked calmly. "You can help us by telling everyone the truth," Colton said, stepping forward. "Tell them how you stalked us, how you manipulated everything, how you ruined our reputations with lies. What lies would those be?" "You know what lies," Talia screeched. "The fake screenshots, the edited recordings, all of it." I pulled out my phone. "Are you saying you didn't post about our marriage in your Truth Circle group? That was private. Are you saying you didn't plan to falsely accuse me of abuse?" "I never said that." I hit play on the Murphy's Pub recording. Her own voice filled the evening air. "You could claim emotional abuse. Make him out to be controlling." The neighbors shifted uncomfortably. This was better than reality TV. "That was taken out of context," she protested. "What context makes planning false accusations acceptable?" Colton, apparently realizing that Talia was digging their hole deeper, tried a different approach. "Look, man, maybe we all made mistakes," he said. "But what you did was worse. You systematically destroyed our lives. I exposed your behavior. There's a difference. You cost me my job. Your behavior cost you your job. I just made sure the right people knew about it. You turned my girlfriend against me. I told your girlfriend the truth. What she did with that information was her choice." He was getting angrier, his face reddening with frustration. "You think you're so smart, don't you? Hiding behind your computer, pulling strings like some kind of puppet master?" "I think I'm thorough," I said. "And I think you're both here because you've run out of other options." That's when Talia snapped. "You want to see desperate?" she screamed, grabbing a handful of mulch from my flower bed and throwing it at me. "You want to see what you've done to us?" The mulch scattered harmlessly, but the gesture was enough to set Colton off. He lunged forward, grabbing my shirt just like he had in the parking lot weeks earlier. "You're going to fix this," he snarled. "You're going to call everyone and tell them it was all lies, or I'm going to—" "Going to what?" I asked quietly. He hesitated, suddenly aware that we had an audience of witnesses, all of them recording with their phones. "Going to what, Colton?" I repeated. "Beat me up? Threaten me? Commit assault in front of a dozen witnesses?" His grip loosened slightly. "Because that would just prove everything I've said about you, that you're unstable, unprofessional, and dangerous." "I'm not dangerous," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "No? Then why are you grabbing me? Why are you making threats? Why did you come to my house to intimidate me?" He let go of my shirt and stepped back, finally understanding the trap he'd walked into. But Talia wasn't done. She grabbed a garden hose that was lying nearby and turned it on, spraying water everywhere in a final act of desperate rage. "There!" she screamed as water soaked into the ground, my clothes, and several of the watching neighbors. "How do you like being humiliated?" I stood there, dripping wet, and started laughing. "That's it?" I asked. "That's your big revenge? A garden hose?" The absurdity of the situation, my ex-wife and her former lover, both unemployed and desperate, staging a water fight in my driveway while the entire neighborhood watched, was too much. 8 months of planning, I said, still chuckling. 8 months of scheming and plotting and humiliating me behind my back. And this is what you came up with for an encore? Talia dropped the hose, her face crumpling as she realized how ridiculous she looked. "I hate you," she whispered. "I know," I said. "But here's the thing, Talia. Your hate doesn't matter anymore. Nothing you do or say matters anymore. You're irrelevant." I turned to address the crowd of neighbors. "Show's over, everyone. Thanks for coming out. There'll be refreshments at the Hendersons' house. I hear they're having a barbecue this weekend." A few people chuckled. Mike from the corner gave me a thumbs up. Even Mrs. Henderson, who'd been clutching her pearls throughout the entire confrontation, managed a small smile. Talia and Colton stood there, soaking wet and humiliated, as the crowd dispersed. They looked like children who'd thrown a tantrum and suddenly realized no one was paying attention anymore. "This isn't over," Colton said weakly. "Yes, it is," I replied. "It's been over for weeks. You just didn't know it yet." They climbed into his beat-up Honda and drove away, leaving behind only wet spots on my driveway and the lingering smell of desperation. Derek, who'd apparently been watching from across the street, walked over with a beer in his hand. "Well," he said, "that was anticlimactic." "The best endings usually are," I said, accepting the beer gratefully. "So what now? Back to normal life?" I looked at my house, my quiet, peaceful, Talia-free house, and smiled. "Derek," I said, "this is normal life. Everything before was just a very long, very expensive mistake." "And you're okay with how it all played out?" I thought about it for a moment. Was I okay with becoming the kind of person who could systematically dismantle someone's life? Was I comfortable with the calculated cruelty I'd shown? "I'm okay with standing up for myself," I said finally. "I'm okay with not being the smallest man in the room anymore. Even if it meant destroying everyone who crossed you?" "I didn't destroy anyone, Derek. I just stopped enabling their destruction of me." He nodded slowly. "You know what the scary part is?" "What?" "You're right, about all of it. They did try to destroy you first. They did plan to humiliate you and rob you and ruin your reputation, and if you hadn't fought back, they would have succeeded. So what's scary about that? What's scary is how good you were at it, how thoroughly you dismantled their lives. It makes me wonder what you could do to someone who really deserved it." I smiled and took a long drink of beer. I guess we'll never have to find out. 6 months later, I heard through the neighborhood gossip network that Talia had moved to another state, taking a job with a small marketing firm that probably didn't do thorough background checks. Colton was reportedly working at a gym in the suburbs, keeping his head down and his social media accounts private. Jenna and Danny had both gotten divorced. Apparently, their husbands had decided that wives who spent their time plotting against other marriages weren't worth keeping around. As for me, I got a promotion at work, started dating a nice woman from the accounting department, and learned to appreciate the simple pleasure of a quiet evening at home. The smallest man in the room had finally found his proper size.